been doing this job for 30 years, and honestly, you discussed your burnout. I've told you I've been burnt out too, but do you have any tips or strategies that folks who are in their early or mid in their careers that want to make it to that 30-year mark, but are just looking at the mountain of work ahead of them and the burnout that all of us are experiencing? Like, how do you manage it all?
I didn't. And so I think if you can figure it out before then, so burnout for me happened, like I realized it, I think probably when I was on already being recovered or on the way to recovery, it was two things. It was my CEO having a conversation with me, like, you're not yourself and you don't seem engaged. And I wasn't. And I was like, I'm surprised it took you this long to notice, because I just didn't give a shit about anything. And then it was me reading an article, and I remember by Jack Kelly, and I was like, oh, because I knew I wasn't really depressed, although it kind of felt like that. And I was like, that's what it is. And I didn't recognize it in myself. And like, how the hell was I going to recognize it in other people if I couldn't even recognize it in myself? So a lot of self-care, I don't want to say is bullshit, but you can't tell somebody to meditate or write in a journal and assure them it's going to work for them, because it's so unique. What the road to prevention and the road to healing are so unique for each individual. So unique. So it's impossible to say like, hey, this works, this works, this works. So first of all, you have to, if you want a long career, like why? Why do you want to do this work? Can't be because you love people. Like, you just don't say, well, I love people. Well,
because you start to hate them after a while. You'll hate them after a while.
Yeah. Certainly it's not all sunshine and roses, right? And the more you move up in your career, if you go up, and you shouldn't have to move up that proverbial ladder, because a progression in a career can look as unique as an individual. But if you do get to a CPO level, it looks less like day-to-day HR and more like the business. And you're doing less of the tactical things in most companies that people really love and embrace when they get into the field. So I think you have to really ask yourself why. And then you have to really embrace your inner badass, and like, you really have to get bold and brave, something I was terrible at and some people are innately good at. You have to stand up for your people. And if you can't do that, you might want to reconsider whether a career leading HR at least is for you, right? Because there's lots of different aspects of that. And then at all costs, set your boundaries and protect yourself from burnout, because it sucks and it takes months to recover. And I talk about this a lot because it's really shocking. I have a lot of friends in HR, a lot of friends in the world of HR, a lot of friends leading HR. I am the only friend or only person that I know, there are other people that I know, but only person that did not leave their job over the past 3 years. I don't know. I know of people, but I am not close with anyone that stayed in their job over the past 3 years, who was at a CPO or head of HR type of role. And that's shocking. Not shocking to me, I guess, but shocking to people when I tell them that, because it is brutal and it's not going to get any better. So you have to have a real passion for doing this work, and you have to have a real commitment, and maybe even a real like calling to do this kind of work, because it's difficult. And like you said earlier, it doesn't really get acknowledged. And there are certainly jobs that are, the teachers, the doctors, the nurses, the medical professionals of the world are certainly doing things that are more difficult than the work that I do. But within a business, I would say it's the most difficult job that doesn't get acknowledged.
I say that a lot too. I also just think it's the hardest executive position, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think you have to like constantly advocate and fight for people. It's so hard because it's also sometimes like deeply personal, especially like DEI work. When you are identify from an underrepresented group, then you have to also advocate for all those employees, advocate for equality, advocate for equity, inclusion. And then you also are somebody who's experienced microaggressions, you've experienced discrimination. And so I think there's like a layer to this job that a lot of people really don't understand how deeply hard and draining it can be. And
absolutely. And pay equity on top of that, and doing that through the lens of keeping yourself at a distance from that when that's really, really difficult. And because you see everything and you know everything.
I would say this job is not for the faint of heart. And I also started telling people, like, if you don't like conflict, I'm not entirely sure this is the best job for you, because there's a lot of conflict in our job. You have to coach people. You have to tell potentially your CEO and your leadership team the things that they do that's incorrect. And a lot of feedback is deeply personal to people. And so if you are afraid to have those hard conversations, I would say work on that first before you decide if this is the path that you want to be on. Because
that's great advice.
Your employees are relying on you a lot of times. And every time I meet somebody and I tell them I'm in HR, 99% of the time their reaction is, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that doesn't make me feel good.
No.
Everyone listening, every single one of my friends has a bad experience with HR. And so with that in mind, I also carry the responsibility of this job so deeply because I don't want to inflict trauma on anyone. That'd be the worst case scenario. So I think that is also an interesting facet of this job, that we carry an added responsibility to be a better HR team than maybe the ones before that your employees have encountered. And I always feel like we're starting from the negative, where a lot of executive roles are starting from the positive, where it's we have to combat everything that people think about HR and do our job really well to get them to believe in us.
I think you're right, because, you talk to a new person who comes from a different company, and we try to create a really incredible people experience right from the get-go. And we do, a lot of things to help ensure that. And we hear all the time, wow, this isn't how I was onboarded at my past company, and your team is so different than, and I love hearing that, but it also makes me sad. And whenever I talk about transformation to HR professionals, when I talk about that kind of much older school versus more modern approach, I say if you're there, you'll hear me say this again, ask your friends and family about their HR departments. Most people don't do that, but ask, because you'll hear it anyway, but ask and find out how many people actually have positive experiences, and then look at your own company and ask your people. And are you providing that kind of experience? Are you creating that environment that's, providing that experience? Because there are external factors. Sometimes there's lack of support. Sometimes there's lack of resources. But then there are the things that we do or don't do. And we can control the things that we do or don't do. The other things we can have influence on, we can't always completely control, but we can all make forward progress. I'm still trying to do it every day.